Hey everybody, well thank you so much. We've got a group of fantastic folks together. My name is Chris McQueen, and this is the first of maybe, who knows, maybe more, I don't know, but I'm calling it the Iowa Gravel Series Podium Podcast. It's an opportunity for us to get together and talk about racing from those that are standing on the podium, maybe learn a little bit from those folks. So we're gonna do a round of introductions. I'll kind of go first. Like I said, my name's Chris McQueen. I'm the race director. I live in Glenwood, Iowa, on the far western side of Iowa. And one of the questions that I kind of asked everybody as they introduced themselves is like, why did they get into gravel? And I don't have a great answer for that. So but I'll probably get to answer this question many times if we end up doing this more. But my reason for getting into gravel is because it's there. It's like right out my front door. I'm fortunate enough to live in the Les Hills, and it's really easy for me to get out and get on some gravel roads really, really fast, and I love it. Like I grew up with out west riding fire roads, and it's just the kind of riding that connects me with my childhood. So that's a little bit about me. We'll get more into what this is and maybe more, but let's go ahead and start with introductions from the fine folks that we have on here. Jonathan, can you kick us off?
Sure, Jonathan White, live in Council Bluffs, Iowa, so a little bit north of Chris. And Chris and I knew each other long before the Iowa Gravel Series. So I race gravel because that's where the races are. If it were up to me, it would be crits. But the crits dried up and the gravel races started, so that's why I'm doing gravel. I guess it's safer than road, but road is smoother and funner. And mountain biking is pretty fun too. So I do all three of them, but gravel's a good time as well. Do I pass it off to someone else?
Yeah, go ahead and pass it off to someone else. We'll surprise everybody.
Claire.
Okay, my name is Claire O'Leary. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I got into gravel because I started off bike racing and cyclocross, and I started that on a sibling bet. And gravel is just kind of the natural progression for the rest of the year. And like Jonathan said, it's where the races are.
So did you win the bet, Claire?
I don't know if it's necessarily winning, but occasionally I get texts from my brother that involve like I made a monster. So probably.
Nice. Well, who would you pick next for
Travis.
Okay. I'm Travis Lowens. I live in Omaha, Nebraska. Why gravel? I think there's lots of reasons. I think the biggest one is that like Jonathan said, it's a little bit safer. There's less traffic out there. It's accessible enough from here. And to be honest, just like Claire and Jonathan said, it's where the races are right now. There's a lot of them nearby that keep popping up. So it's there. It also kind of suits my power profile a little bit better. I'm no sprinter at all. I don't really have a lot of high anaerobic capacity, but I can usually pull high tempo for a while. So that usually works out okay for gravel. Let's shoot on over to Derek.
Hi, I'm Derek Henscheid, Iowa City, Iowa. I kind of got into gravel just from like peer pressure and wanting to go to new areas. It opens up especially, just everywhere. It opens up so much more places to ride, which is great. I haven't done any racing really before this. I actually just started riding gravel last fall. Did a race and then kind of got hooked with some local people. So
Yeah. Are you still friends with these folks that peer pressured you into it, Derek?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good move, I think. Because it's just been a lot of fun going all over the place to find new places to ride.
Cool.
How about Phil?
Hey, so I'm Phil Syme. I live just south of La Crosse, Wisconsin, so pretty close to Minnesota. Nice gravel over there, and also I'm a few miles, 4 miles from my house. I got some amazing gravel roads. I got into gravel, kind of the opposite of Jonathan. I don't like crits and I don't like road racing. Crits for sure do not suit my power profile. That punchy stuff is not me. I like to like put my head down and just grind away at tempo for 20, 30 minutes. And that's what I love. So that's why I got into it, and I couldn't see myself doing anything else. Kari Ann.
All right, so Kari Ann Pappas. I live in Omaha, Nebraska. Actually came here from Minneapolis, Claire. So nice to be back at my roots. How I got into gravel, I started in the world of triathlon. And after doing that for, I don't know, 6 years, 8 years, realized that I really was not a very good swimmer, and I really was a pretty good cyclist and a pretty good runner. So I've really focused on the cycling. That's where my friends are. That's where I've met great friends. I think it's also partly my way of reconnecting with my farming background. I grew up farming in North Dakota, and I just love to get out and see the countryside. I love to see different areas, and definitely gravel lets you do that.
Yeah, that's getting out and that whole exploration thing and just kind of being out in those more remote areas is something that's really helped me love it. Do you swim at all anymore, or have you kind of stopped swimming?
No. So yeah, no, that was some of the notes I made when you were talking about training. Is definitely still do believe in the multi-sport. Like, I really think that it's really good to have other sports to fall back on, and swimming is one of those where it's very low impact and to be a great cardio workout. So I still do run, swim, bike, lift, all of that, but this year especially only racing gravel.
Okay. Well, we'll get more into training and things like that. I definitely am a big fan of like the multi-sport training and stuff, but it means that I'm crap at pretty much everything. So just try to do my best. All right. Well, thank you again for being here and for kind of kicking things off. I want to, for kind of our first few questions, I want to touch on just briefly training and nutrition and gear and recovery today. I did also throw out some questions onto the socials and got a few people with some kind of very specific questions. And so if you have any insights on those, I think I sent those out to you ahead of time. But let's go ahead and start off with kind of like a little bit of a training overview. I went and tried to stalk your Strava a little bit. And so I went out and looked and tried to see what I could find. And so I'm gonna start with Jonathan. I'm gonna give him a little bit of crap because I think he's a liar. So looking at his Strava, it says that he has about maybe 100 miles a week, and I think that's complete BS. Like, Jonathan,
Definitely
what
in
is?
the past 3 weeks, I haven't done 100 miles for sure.
Oh yeah,
I haven't touched my bike, but.
Yeah, for those that don't know, and we'll talk about this because we have a section on recovery. Jonathan had an unfortunate went down at Unbound here 3 weeks ago and broke his foot pretty bad. So we definitely want to talk a little bit more about that. But here's my question, Jonathan: are you a phenom at only riding about 100 miles a week, or are you a complete liar on Strava?
No, I mean, I was training for Unbound, and so I was putting in a lot of time, a lot of miles. There's only really one way to do that, and that's to spend the time on the bike. And so year to date, I did do a lot of riding, and I don't hide anything on Strava. A lot of other racers, they won't put up their race rides because they think that if we know their power profile somehow, we'll be able to beat them. But I just put it all up.
So what is your training look like usually when you're not, broken and everything? Like how many miles and what are you doing beyond that?
It depends on what I'm prepping for and what bike I'm on. So typically I go by day of the week. Monday is an average day. I don't do anything hard, just get the legs ready for Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll do back-to-back hard rides, whether it depends on what I'm getting ready for, interval work, or some hard laps at Lewis and Clark, a track out here. So I'll put in hard rides those days, and then I'll take Thursday off. And then Friday is usually a shakeout ride to get ready for whatever race I'm doing on Saturday. And then I take Sunday off as well.
So if you're doing a century or a 100-mile gravel ride and stuff, how many miles are you trying to put in during the week then?
So if I'm prepping for a 100-mile gravel ride, I kind of think more about what kind of power am I going to put out. So I'd probably focus a lot of time on my sweet spot in the few weeks getting ready for that. That's kind of, I don't remember. I know what my number is, but I don't remember all the names and the zones. And so I'd spend a lot of time there, just getting ready for what I think I would need to do in that event. But if I'm also getting ready for a mountain bike race, I do a lot more higher intensity work. So it kind of depends on what I'm tuning myself up for.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to hear from other folks as well. So, Kari Ann, kind of going down my list. I don't have it in any sort of order. I could not find you on Strava. I don't know if you are, if you're just and that's fine if you're not a social person. I don't think everybody has to have everything on Strava or whatever. But I'm curious, hearing that you're a triathlete. What does your training week kind of look like, and how many miles are you trying to put in the different areas?
Yeah, so I'll start with, yeah, you couldn't find me on Strava. I'm not there. I just haven't succumbed to that social media force yet. So maybe someday. So from a miles, it really varies. I would say a lot like Jonathan just said, like what is really coming up. Typically, I believe you can get a really good workout in an hour. So that hour, can get some really good intensity. I probably am on my bike at least 4 days a week, maybe 5. I'd say I don't go by days, maybe like Jonathan did. I'm more, what does my week look like? How am I balancing that with my other sports that I might be doing, with other commitments I might have? So typically do one easy ride, one like group ride that sort of fills my soul. It's not all easy, it's not all hard, but there's some roadies that I love to ride with. So get out with them. Try to go out then and do 2 other workouts, and that workout could be a race. This week it was a race weekend, and then I had done 2 like 12-minute intervals on a road bike actually. So I don't spend all my time on any one particular bike necessarily either. Guess I'm a believer that about 80% of my work is going to be pretty easy. Down in that zone 2, 20% of it's going to be up, maybe even above race intensity for me. So hitting like a zone 4 or 5 for that 20% is kind of how I train. Number of miles, wow. It varies. It's all over the board, from probably over 300 sometimes to down closer to, race 70 this weekend. So it's probably more like 120-mile week this last week.
Kind of tapering off just a little bit right before the race, sort of thing.
Yeah. And then, 70 of it was race. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, I kind of hit that 80-20 as my big rule. Get on the bike 4 times a week. Big believer in hour workouts. If that's what you've got, make the most of it. And I think you can get some great workouts in an hour.
Okay. Great. Oh well, and we might come back to swimming and stuff, but I want to get kind of around the horn real quick. Travis, I saw from you about 140 miles a week on your Strava, and I didn't dig too hard. I didn't go week by week everything, but saw some Zwifting in the winter and everything. How would you describe your training routine, your weekly training routine?
Yeah, I would say I'm about probably 80% of my time is on Zwift, even during the summertime. It just works better with my schedule. I can get up in the morning, get an hour and a half in on Zwift, Monday through Friday, most of the time. And Saturdays are kind of my outdoor day. So Saturdays are generally anywhere 2 to 4 hours outside. So yeah, a lot of it's indoors. It just works really well for me. It's a controlled environment too, so that really helps. Zwift has just been really amazing for me. As far as there's community on there as well. I do 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I do a group ride in the mornings. It's the Kiss at Base ride, if anyone wants to join. It's a good group of people from all around the world. There's different levels of people to ride with. So those are kind of like a group ride day. I kind of pick either a C ride if I want an easy day, or maybe a B ride if I want more of like a tempo-ish kind of a day. Tuesdays and Thursdays are usually kind of are my hard days, depending on what I'm looking at. Training wise, where I'm at in the season, I might be doing sweet spot and trying to push out my time and zone and sweet spot, or I might, as I get closer to race date, work on VO2 max type work, really to get that high end going. And then been trying to get some anaerobic capacity type stuff in as well, but that's usually closer to race date. So yeah, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, kind of a nice fun group ride. Tuesdays, Thursdays, hard days. Saturdays are hard and long, if I can.
We could probably have a huge conversation about indoor training and Zwift in particular. I moved off of Zwift and onto Trainer Road because I found that I could not stop racing with Zwift. Like I would get out there and like I could not keep myself under control. So Trainer Road just made sure that I didn't do something stupid.
That's fair.
But I love it. I think it's beautiful. It's totally fun. All right, Claire, let's head over to you. Looking at you, I was seeing somewhere around 120 to 200 miles a week, but also I saw some things that definitely impressed me where I was like, oh, she's got a sub 4 hour marathon time on there and a 12-minute 5K run time. So
okay, that's an error. That was probably a bike and probably from years ago, but continue and then I'll get into more.
I saw a little bit of Zwift on there and maybe some gym rock climbing, indoor gym rock climbing stuff. So it looked like you're actually more of like a 3-to-1, 3 times as much run as much as bike. So I'm curious what kind of like, at least on Zwift. Again, I'm just going off of like, I'm not on Zwift, on Strava. I saw 1,700 runs and 500 rides. So I was like, oh, maybe she's more of a runner.
So I'm I ran in high school and college. After that, I did ultras. I actually ran 50 miles before I ever rode 50 miles. And then it kind of, around 2019 or so, 2018, 2019, there was an overlap of, sibling heckling of buy a bike and do a real sport, running is dumb, with really paying the price for some long chronic injuries that came up during college, had surgery, got through it, but they kept coming back and dealing with that and finally being like, I can't run the way I want to anymore. And hey, biking is really fun and you can race that too.
Okay. So what's your workout week look like right now?
Mondays are usually rest days. Tuesdays are going to be harder workouts, periodized of like doing some like threshold intervals now. And then depending on how much time I have, maybe an hour or two after the intervals too. Wednesdays are kind of a longish day. Thursday is just an hour spin, really nice. Usually like to like wear a t-shirt or like go mess around on some trails or go to where our local cyclocross races are and like invent a new course in my head. Fridays are also interval workouts. And then Saturday and Sunday is getting the miles and the time when I can. If I can get out to gravel, great. Sometimes hit some group rides. It's a little bit of whatever the weekend looks like.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right. Let's get to Derek and Phil real quick, and then we'll get into some meatier questions and stuff. So Derek, so what I saw was something around 400 miles a week, like 20 hours on the bike. And I think you said at the beginning you were like, I just kind of started into this thing, like I'm just new.
Yes. New to gravel. I have, like I said, I never rode competitively, but I've ridden and run for like the last 10 years. I mean, constantly on the road. But yeah, I'm putting in, I don't have a real training plan. I just ride when I can, which is, I have a lot of time. On Tuesdays, there's a group ride that's a road group ride that's usually can get pretty hard that I try to join when I can. But with my kids' schedule and my wife's schedule, I usually can't make that. And like Travis said, yeah, I Zwift a lot just because it works with my schedule. Like my kids are old enough that they can play with stuff and I can ride inside and so that's when I get it in.
So, I mean, are you looking at maybe 2 hours, a day sort of thing, either on Zwift or outside, or in the morning, evening? When do you head out? How do you fit in?
most weekdays, yeah, it's somewhere around 2 hours a day. And then on the weekends, I'll do a longer ride. Like today, I did 5 hours. Wednesdays, I do a more laid back group ride, but that's pretty fun. It's like our local gravel group ride. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, like I said, I don't have a plan really. I've started, like, as of now starting to do things competitively, I am like trying to maybe target specific areas, do workouts that target, my, VO2 and stuff like that. But yeah, that's as structured as it gets.
Well, I mean, it's working because
For me.
you won, came in with a great time at Waukon, and you're definitely putting the time in on the bike. So
Yeah.
so good things are happening. Phil, I could not find you on Strava. I don't know if are you there or are you?
I am. I
Okay.
am. I'm probably, you have to request to follow me. I have some of my stuff hidden. I don't know why. Just weird, I guess. But yeah, so I do like 150 to 200 miles a week on average. Um, Mondays and Fridays are my rest days. And then I'll try to do 1 to 2 hard rides a week. So we have a local, it's called Tuesday Night Worlds, and it's kind of like a race simulation. So I count that as my intervals whenever that's going on. So that'd be one of my hard days. And then on my easier days, I just do lots and lots of zone 2. So like endurance pace, and that's usually for multiple hours. And I've just found that's best for me for building fitness because I feel great the next day. I can go do it again. After intervals, sometimes you'd feel beat up and you didn't really get back on the bike. I've noticed that right away the next day. So I can just go do zone 2 next day, just go do zone 2 again. So that's what seems to work good for me.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. All right. So I want to, like I said, I'm still figuring out like how to time all this and get us enough time. And this is kind of a big group. This is essentially 2 podiums. This is basically Waukon and Silver City. So we got a lot of folks in here, and so kind of lightning-ish round, but not really. I'm curious. When was the first time you went from like, and this is going to be hard, but I wanted to get this story in. So as quick as you can, I'm curious, when did it go from like, hey, I'm riding a bike to, oh, I'm I'm going out and I'm racing my bike now. Like when did that mental shift, about what age or what time frame did that happen in your head where you're like, hey, I'm a person that can ride a bike and I've been out on a bike and everything, and now it's like, no, I'm riding a bike with purpose because I'm going to go out and I'm going to race. So I'm going to go kind of backwards here. Phil, when did that mind shift happen to you? Do you remember that?
Yeah, so I'm like mid 30s now, so I'd say probably 10 years ago, so like 25-ish. I was at one of these Tuesday night rides, and it was like my first time going to it, and one of the local, I guess local legends, I'd call him, just a really strong rider. He was like, "Hey, you're a pretty strong rider. You should try some races and just see what happens." So I tried some crits, and like I said, I didn't enjoy crits, but I did pretty well. So then I found my passion in gravel. But yeah, mid 20s, and just luckily somebody kind of pushed me and said, "Hey, you kind of look like you're a decent rider, so maybe you should try this."
Okay, so about 5 years ago that shift. Derek, how about you?
Um, well, yeah, it was a couple years ago where, like, I'm 33 now, but a couple years ago where I kind of realized that I'm pretty good on the bike, but I never was interested in competing until, like I said, last fall I started riding gravel. I did a couple races, a couple, like, sort of like Phil said, a couple local guys like noticed that. I mean, I took third place in my first race and I soloed 90 miles of it and almost caught the two lead guys. But so one of those guys was the one who kind of was like, "Hey, you should join our team." And from there, that's when I started, I guess, being more competitive about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That was actually one of my questions. If there was, well, we'll get to that, I guess, with the lightning round a little bit more about like, have you ever won a race without or got on a podium without training or prepping for it? Claire, when did that shift happen in your mind between like, hey, I just ride or I just run, but no, I'm out there to compete?
Probably 2021. I did a little bit of cyclocross racing in 2019, but then kind of the transition from running to really like being more into biking and actually training on the bike and not just going out and putzing around really kind of happened in like 2020 into 2021. Took a lot of clinics for like cyclocross skills and all those off-road handling skills. And then it kind of went from there.
So were you trying to compete when you were doing the cyclocross? I mean, were you getting into it for fitness or were you getting into it to be competitive?
I wouldn't say those first races were very competitive. I took out a lot of tape, just like crashing into things. But I mean, trying, but at the same time, wasn't really on the bike, 6 days a week or doing intervals or anything like that.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool. Travis, when did that shift in your mind go from I ride to I race?
I started riding bikes as an adult, shoot, 12, 11 years ago, something like that. I'm almost 42 now, so I was 30, 31 when I started riding. Just kind of riding around with my brother for a while, and then he was a lot faster than me, and I wanted to get faster to just be kind of his pace, and the training bug kind of hit me. I like data, and I like kind of figuring those kinds of things out. So we started playing with that and learning about training, and then got into racing, and again, just the training and all that. I actually probably like training more than I do like racing sometimes. Yeah, it was maybe 11 years ago or so. I did crits, mountain bikes, cyclocross stuff, and now I've just kind of settled into gravel and Zwift.
Okay, very cool. Kari Ann, I mean,
Yeah.
you've had you have a lot of experience in a couple different fields. So
Yeah, so
you can mention about the writing and stuff, but I'm interested about kind of the overall competitiveness for you.
So really started writing actually in my 40s, so lower end of my 40s. I'm in the lower end of my 50s now, so it was probably about 11, 12 years ago that I really got into the triathlon side of things and riding my bike, and doing that for racing took a couple years, but had success in that. So I think that like the mindset, the shift there from just riding to racing was pretty quick. From a bike perspective, or specifically cycling, it was probably about 6 years ago, and I was on a group ride and similar, where somebody just encouraged me to jump in with the faster group of guys. And it was like, oh, no, I don't belong with them. And they're like, no, just go hang on as long as you can. And, I think slowly that just built up my strength and probably my confidence around cycling. And it's still one of those points where even I still ride with the group of guys, and they're like, yeah, we remember that day. Just suddenly you were there. And it was, but that was like the confidence, I think, came, and I had the fitness. I'd been doing it for 5 or 6 years, but didn't maybe have the confidence and the bike handling skills and maybe the endurance at that time. And it's really grown from there over the 6 years. Specifically on gravel, I'd say the shift was probably around a little after Claire. So that's when I really started focusing more on gravel and training even a lot more specifically for cycling. It's been a couple of years.
It is super helpful to have that group to kind of say, come on, let's do that. And I think that's a really good thing for gravel and cycling in general. It is a group thing. Jonathan, I kind of imagine that you came out of the womb competitively. If you had had a twin, you probably would have elbowed that twin out. But that's just my caricature of you, knowing you a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, but tell me the truth. When did you go from like I'm doing something to no, I need to win? What do you remember?
So I started racing BMX bikes when I was 10, became a runner, and then bought a road bike when I was 21 and raced later that year. It's never been a ride. It's always been a race.
Actually, there's a guy I was talking to just the other day who wants to put in a big BMX track in Council Bluffs, so we might need to chat about that and see if we figure out.
That'll be a good way to get injured.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's worried about crit races, and we're starting up BMX tracks. All right. Well, we've gone around the horn a couple times, so I'm gonna throw out some other questions that we got from the social groups. And if you don't have any input or answers on these things, don't worry about it. You don't need to chime in. Please do if you do have thoughts on this. But um, specifically around training, there were some questions about like people were like, "Hey, what?" Courtney Neal asked, "I can't get to gravel all the time. What other training do you find helpful?" So maybe any strong opinions from the group on what you feel is the most helpful for specifically gravel training when you can't get to the gravel?
I can take this since I live in Minneapolis and the closest gravel is probably 20 miles. So just a lot of just road race or road riding, building strength through intervals. And then as far as off-road handling skills, even just, doing cornering in a park and stuff like I do for cyclocross. And then also riding mountain bike trails on a drop bar bike. It's some of the more mellow ones, but really underbiking things and getting used to what it feels like to slide out, really helps for gravel racing. If you overcook a turn and all of a sudden your rear end is going out, knowing how to save that is huge.
Yeah, no, I think that's especially I like the going out and just being on the mountain bike. And anything else from the group on that one? Any suggestions for Courtney?
Deadlifting.
Deadlifting, yeah, getting in the gym. How many, just by kind of raise of hands, how many of you do anything in the gym, just weight stuff?
Just deadlifting.
Just just deadlifting. Nice. Oh, okay. And do any of you work with a coach?
No.
Unless you
No?
count myself.
Everyone's
Self-coach.
self-coached. So
I did
no,
one season to kind of get a feel for how it is, and then no one can coach you better than yourself if you know what you're doing.
did you
Same
feel
thing
that?
for me. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you're fine, Phil. For
I was
those
just
that have
gonna
worked
add
with a
on.
coach, yeah, go ahead.
Just gonna add on same thing. I did use the coach for about a year and kind of learned what they had to offer, and it's like okay, I learned, got a lot of good knowledge, but after that year, it's like okay, I think I can kind of take this and run now and change things up to how they work for you based on that base knowledge.
Yeah.
I'll probably take the opposite perspective on that. If I could afford a coach, I would 100% get a coach. I think you can delude yourself sometimes, or you can maybe not do what you really need to do because you don't really like it. And sometimes the accountability could be good too. It's just too much money for me to do it.
Has anyone done any like peer coaching where they've just maybe talked to a friend? Sorry, go ahead, Claire. You
Yeah,
had your
no,
hand up.
Oh,
I was gonna say, oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I've done some of that peer coaching type stuff, and I'm. It's not that I can't afford. I haven't wanted to pay for a coach but I do agree the accountability part of it though. It's like if I'm paying someone to tell me what to do, I'm probably more likely to listen than my friend telling me, "Hey, you should work on this," instead of doing the exact same thing every day. But yeah.
So I do work with a coach. I think I'm the only one in this group. And for me, it's accountability, but not so much of doing it. It's like not doing stupid things. And I have especially through, running in college and stuff. And afterwards, I have a track record of doing horrendously stupid things and burning myself out in 1,000 different ways. And sometimes it's nice to have someone tell you that you're an idiot and don't do that.
So you have a problem with the more is better philosophy of athleticism? You're like just always faster, always better. Is that a challenge for you?
Absolutely, yeah.
So
I agree as well. Overtraining, I have an issue with. That's why I stopped running, because I kept hurting myself. It's harder to hurt yourself with overtraining on the bike, at least like stress fractures and pulled muscles and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so maybe let's talk a little bit about planning then for the year. When do you start planning your season? Like how do you plan things out? Are you like take it month by month, or do you start way back in December and plan out your whole season through September, October? We probably don't have time for everybody, but I'm curious what some of the different philosophies are there. Go for it, Derek.
First, well, again, like I said earlier, I've just started getting into racing, but I think ideally it's probably looking at smaller races month by month and to see how far away they are. work out my wife's schedule. Bigger events where there's, they're going to fill up, you'd probably want to start looking earlier to make sure you can get signed up and not get put on a wait list. That's my experience so far, I guess. But again, I'm pretty green in this.
Who's like, I'm looking for someone who's like, oh no, I planned this out in like, I plan like months and months in advance. Anybody on that end?
I'll start usually in like November, December, kind of looking at maybe one or two races that I really want to do well at the next year, and then kind of count back the weeks or the months back from that and kind of start a periodized training plan. Just a real general, I don't lay out workouts until probably maybe a couple of weeks ahead of time, but I'll kind of lay out, here's kind of my base phase, and here's when I'll start working on threshold and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'll start November, December.
Thanks. Does anybody just wing it completely? They're like, I don't plan until like, oh, that one looks good, and then they go and sign up a couple weeks in advance, and that's just how every race is. No one wings it that much.
Okay. I mean, I will sign up for something a week out, but I don't I don't know. I do just, because I get friends who will be like, hey, you should do this race. And I'm like, okay, I'll go do that race.
Yeah. And I also think that I'm a big believer that consistency is like really super important. So in general, I have that base, so I can go do that 100K or 100-mile race. And I'm guessing that we've all kind of got that base. And so, a week before, hey, it looks like it's great weather at Silver City, Chris. I was signing up that morning of.
Which I'm so glad you did.
Yeah. So it is a little bit of like, because I've got the base, because I've done the training, because I've got the miles, I feel really good just jumping into those races right now. I think if I was, but I also know that I have started with the plan of these are the 3 or 4 races that I'm doing, and they just are adding to my build.
All right. Well, I'm going to learn a lot about doing these. I probably could spend a whole hour-long conversation about every one of them. So I'm going to move on a little bit onto nutrition on the bike. There were some questions, and one by Lisa Mormon, who actually ended up on the podium at Waukon. And she was looking at like, hey, she's got some GI distress issues, very sensitive stomach. And so curious if there's anybody else with like sensitive stomachs and any tips on what to do with food and hydration, or any sensitive stomachs in the group.
I don't know that I'd say I have a sensitive stomach, other than sometimes I just don't feel like eating certain things on the bike, like even gels or like chews. Sometimes they just don't taste good to me. So what I found works best for me is just some sort of hydration mix. So this year I'm trying Flow Formula. So it's like, I forget, 350 calories per bottle or something like that. And then last year I used the Scratch Super Fuel. That's similar. I think that's like 400 calories per bottle. And that's literally all I'll have for a race. If it's under 6-7 hours, that's all I'll have is hydration mix. And that I don't have any GI issues from that. If it gets over 6-7 hours, then I maybe have like some sort of a bar, some sort of real food just to mix it up. But otherwise, it's just straight hydration mix.
Yeah, gotcha. What's other people's mix? What do they do to make sure their stomach stays nice to them?
I'm similar. Go. I'm similar as far as I do mostly liquid nutrition. I've kind of settled on making my own. I just get bulk maltodextrin, bulk fructose, and then I use like hydration tablets from Science and Sport or Hammer or something like that. So I'll just kind of mix up a ratio that I think has been working for me. I've kind of dialed it in over the last few years. Usually what I've settled on now is 50 grams of dextra or maltodextrin in a bottle and 25 grams of fructose, and then add an electrolyte tablet to it for the flavor and the electrolytes and all that kind of stuff, and try to do a bottle an hour of that. That's about 300 calories. Then I'll have I like SIS gels, so I use those maybe 1 or 2 an hour. That works for everything but hot races. I've found if it's hot, I need more water. And I haven't quite nailed that one down. That's where the GI's distress will usually come in for me, is I don't have enough water to replace what I'm sweating out. And then you have too much sugar in the system and not enough water, and then your gut just does not like that.
Yeah.
That's my theory anyway.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt that at down in Arkansas this last weekend. I was eating and I was sweating. I had plenty of moist, I wasn't bonking, but my stomach was not happy with me. Anybody else? So it sounds like a lot of hydration, getting the calories through your bottle and everything. Anybody like not prefer that? Preferred is like, please, I want to choose something and want something else. Claire, let's go with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have to choose stuff. I think maybe it's from like the running days where you have to rely on that so much more. But like, I mean, my bottles usually don't have any calories. It'll be water and then maybe noon with electrolytes. And then just, eating Cliff Bars, dates, like ginger snap crackers, fruit snacks, just whatever I can throw in my jersey pockets, basically.
Gotcha. Jonathan, what's your setup right now when it comes to fueling?
I eat and drink as much as I possibly can.
What kind of food what's your go-tos right now?
Well, on the bike, Cliff Bars.
Really? Like what, you got a favorite flavor?
Cliff Bars and Gatorade. White chocolate macadamia, I think.
Oh yeah.
They sell
That
it
is
at
one
my
of my
grocery
favorites.
store. And so when I'm on my way and I can just buy it on my way to the event.
Nice. Nice.
Chris, I have a couple things. My background is actually in food, so I think something really important for Lisa is to really read labels and understand what she's seeing when she does read those. There's a lot of different ways that you can get your sugar. I know, Travis, you talked about your maltodextrin, your dextrose, and there's fructose, and there's sucrose, and there's a lot of different types of sugars. Inulin can also sometimes fall in that camp. And they're all going to affect your GI system differently, and they're going to affect you differently on a short race or versus a long race versus heat versus not heat. And so for Lisa, trying some different things and understanding what works and knowing why and what those differences are would be my really first kind of step in all of that. Because you do have to get your calories in, you've got to get your hydration in, and then you can get into some of the more specifics, like what exactly electrolytes do I need? What exactly other macros might I need? But learn to read your labels and kind of know what you're putting in, and you're going to figure out, I think, what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, I think so much of being an athlete is learning to be a scientist almost. So for your science personally, for your body, and so say on a hot day on a standard century or 100-mile, longer-ish race, what are you thinking about? What kind of sugars and things are you thinking of, Kari Ann, for you?
Yeah, so I typically stick more with a sucrose on a long hot day. But I hit a day a month ago where it tasted terrible, and all I could really get into me was like a fizz or a noon type thing. So I mid-race had to really reevaluate my calories, because I eat and drink much like Jonathan, as much as I can throughout the entire race. So you kind of need to be ready and to be adaptable also.
Yeah. All right. It is definitely something I think it's tricky for everybody, and it seems to change as you get a little bit older as well. And so it's adjusting those. Let's hit on gear real quick, and maybe a quick thing on recovery, and then we'll jump into that lightning round. And so hopefully we can keep this close to time. So there was a question. Someone, oh shoot, I forgot to put their name down. I'll see if I can put it in the show notes or whatever. They've signed up for Sarah Cooper's Iowa Gravel Classic. How many of you have done that one before or are familiar with Winterset in that area? Kari Ann has.
I've not done it, but I know the area.
Okay.
It looks
So
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how big this person is, but he had a question about, like, he's got Maxxis Ramblers size 40s on there, and he's wondering if that's a good choice for an Iowa Gravel Classic. I don't know how, that's pretty specific, so.
I've ridden that tire. It's fine. It doesn't roll out as quickly as, say, a Vittoria Terreno Zero, which is what I always ride. But it's a good enough tire. Nothing wrong with it, except maybe it's a little bit too aggressive of a tread pattern. I feel like in gravel, traction has more to do with volume and air pressure, less to do with tread.
I think especially in Iowa where it tends to be a finer grain, like we don't get the bigger chunky stuff. I think that's true. Any other opinions on the Maxxis or what size tire you prefer to be on for Iowa gravel?
I've also used the Maxxis Rambler, same 40 millimeter size. It's like Jonathan said, it's a great tire, but yeah, it might be a little overkill. I'm used to all I've done in Iowa really is the Waukon gravel, and if it's anything like that, yeah, it would definitely probably be overkill, I'd think, for that type of gravel.
Yeah, I think that area it's similar. I think Wakon's a little bit finer stuff or more refined like that. They're not complicated roads. The Class B roads, it does get a little bit of sandy out there. So I don't know. Derek, did you have a thought you wanted to throw in there?
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, from the Waukon 100, yeah, a lot of the roads are like that, but you do find throughout Iowa some spots, because I've ridden a lot. Like I said, I live in Iowa City, but I've ridden all over in Iowa, and sometimes you do find some of that chunkier gravel. But I'm not an expert on gear. I just rode like I said, I just got my gravel bike last fall. I've been riding the specialized, whatever they're called, I can't remember, but 42. Which ones?
Pathfinder.
Yeah, the Pathfinder 42s, and they've served me well so far.
Yeah, they got that center bead down the middle that can be fast on some stuff, and other stuff I've felt like I was slipping out on them a little bit. All right, so curious, is there any go-to kit or gear that you make sure that you have on every race? Kind of that stuff that's in your saddlebag. Maybe does everybody ride with a saddlebag and like a toolkit, or do you just like YOLO it, and if you don't make it, you just make sure to call someone?
I always bring a plug or some sort of plug kit. That's a lifesaver, because you don't want to be putting in tubes if you're in a race, because you've just lost.
Specifically Dynaplug. I've
Exactly,
tried
yeah.
a number of other plugs that do not work.
The little pill things.
Do not work. Yeah, Dynaplug.
Yeah, I think Dynaplug is what they used, and that totally saved my life here on this last race. I think is that the one where you connect the CO2 cartridge to the spike, so you just jam it in there and you open up the CO2 cartridge, and then when you pull it out, it leaves the plug in, or is that different?
There's the one I have, the Dynaplug I have, is no CO2. It's just like, it's similar to what you'd plug a car tire with, but it's way smaller, and it's just like a sticky black, and it looks like, if you looked at it, you'd say there's no way this is gonna plug a tire. But I've used them 4 or 5 times, and they work every single time. They're amazing.
Yeah. The one that someone saved my life with, it was a Dynaplug. It's the Dynaplug Air, and it's all done by Dynaplug, the same Dynaplug sort of setup, but you put your CO2 cartridge on it directly. And what I thought was genius about this is that you throw it into you find your hole, you throw it right in, and then you fill the tube up right there, and then when you pull it out, it's plugged and done. And I think that's my next purchase, because I have a CO2 cartridge and I have a plug system, but this looked very neat and actually would probably save me a little weight and headache. So Dynaplug is not a sponsor of the Iowa Gravel Series, but I might need to reach out to them, because I'm kind of sold. They saved my life on this last race. All right. And all right, let's move on to recovery here a little bit. So this is where I want to get into Jonathan's story, and also anybody else that's had to kind of like bounce back from like a major injury. So I'd love a couple stories here. Jonathan, you had an experience at Unbound. Tell us a little bit about that, and you can. I haven't yet marked these things explicit, but you can use whatever language you feel necessary.
No, I'm far enough away. I don't even think I used profanity when it happened, but 5 miles into Unbound, just riders being erratic, and someone slammed on their brakes, causing someone else to swerve into my front tire, and I went down at a pretty fast clip. Broke my calcaneus, that's the heel bone, in 2 different places. And so I'm halfway through my convalescence before I can put weight on that. Probably won't get to race until next year again if I want if I want to heal right and race right.
Wow. So what are you doing? I mean, that's really that. There's a lot of different types of injuries and everything, but a foot injury can be specifically tricky for like training, keeping your fitness up. So
Yeah.
what are you doing? What are kind of your thoughts as you go through this process?
There's not much I can do to keep my fitness besides watch my diet and make sure I don't gain weight. I'm working closely with a physical therapist. His name is Mike Bartels. He's a cyclist and an absolute genius when it comes to body mechanics and how to apply those to cycling.
Yeah,
And
he's
so I work
Edge.
with him to minimize the problems that I have as I come back up.
Good. Yeah, Mike Bartel, Edge Physical Fitness. He's over in Omaha, Bellevue area.
Papillion, Edge Physical
Papillion.
Therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. I've worked with him as well. What? Uh, uh, well, I'll throw it out to the group. Has anybody else had to bounce back from a major injury? What kind of was the situation there, and what did you do?
Um, well, I wasn't racing competitively, but I did have to sort of bounce back from, it was the last marathon I ran. I ran the last like 5 miles. I tore my groin muscle. I ran through the tear. It was dumb. So I just made everything worse. But the way that, yeah, I mean, I came back, thankfully with that, you could, as long as you don't do, like neuromuscular, like hard type efforts, it's okay to ride the bike. So I just was indoor training for a while after that. You couldn't do any pull motion. So it's like I rode without clips. I just rode on flats, just basically figuring out what kind of exercise, what you can do to try to maintain any fitness without furthering your injury. And obviously with a foot injury, it's going to be even worse, I would say.
With my running background, I have had a number of big injuries. I mean, that's half the reason I'm in biking now, including having surgery about 10 years ago. And with that, it was a couple of weeks in a cast on crutches for like 8 weeks. And, with something like that, you're going to start at zero. So in some ways, it's like figuring out how to build back better and not necessarily saving what you had.
Yeah. With this group, it makes it sound like the best way to become a good gravel cyclist is to be an injured runner. Um, the so let's talk maybe, and if anybody else has a story in here that can kind of relate to this, like what about that mental part of it? Like there's healing the body, but what about kind of the mental, keeping your head in the game when you're feeling kind of broken? Anything there you maybe add on or talk about?
So for me, I'm very grateful it wasn't a more serious injury. It very easily could have been a life-altering injury, not just a 6-week thing. So very grateful for that. But it had that, even though it wasn't serious, it's given me a much different perspective. Because I have 4 kids and a wife and a career, and this has made me realize that I really need to spend more time on my bike. Because you never know when you won't be able to anymore.
It's really the gratitude and understanding, what's important in life that I think is what Jonathan's pointing out there, and I appreciate that.
But I was going to say, speaking of the kids, it's really important, I think, to have the support of your family. Like, I'm sure that before your injury,
they want me out on my bike more than I want me out on my bike.
Yeah, that's every vacation we go on, I have to bring my bike because they know I'm going to be much better to be around if I get a ride in.
Yeah, some people get hangry and we get bikery.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't want to take us over too much on time. I've got a little bit of a lightning round here, and so we'll do. I've got a bunch of questions. We can do kind of like just raise a hands. This is kind of like have you ever sort of thing. So if you answer yes, kind of raise your hand, and then at the end, I have a finish this sentence sort of questions. I got 4 finish this sentence. So, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. So thank you so much for being there. This is great. All right. So lightning round question. First one, have you ever puked on a ride? Got a couple. All right. Have you ever skipped work to get in a training ride? Couple. Okay. Have you ever entered a race without training for it? Like going in zero training? Claire?
I mean, training specifically for it, or
Yeah.
just not training at all?
Just no, nothing. Just going, nothing.
I don't know. I'm always riding, so I guess I can't say yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Have you ever entered a race without training for it and won? So this would be maybe, yeah, you just went off of your base sort of thing, but you weren't training specifically for it.
Again, I don't really train specifically for anything. I haven't had a big enough event yet, so.
Gotcha. All right. Have you ever turned back on a ride because you forgot your GPS or your head unit? You're like, oh, I can't go out there. Kari Ann's like, yes.
I never forget it,
Well, yeah.
but I would turn around.
Yeah. All right. Have you ever given someone your tube, pump, CO2 cartridge on a race? So, Kari Ann, Claire, Jonathan, did I say a hand? You might have to put the hands up high. Okay.
Can't remember. Doesn't sound like me, but somehow I remember doing it.
Have you ever had someone give you a tube or pump or CO2 on a race? Definitely.
I got a jacket from an aid station volunteer when I got very near hypothermia this year.
Oh,
So not exactly the question, but definitely saved me.
yeah.
Here for the volunteers.
Yeah, I like aid station angels and things like that. I am so grateful for. I had a tube stuck in, wrapped up underneath my saddlebag and everything. I thought it was fine. Arkansas was too bumpy. It bumped out, and I ended up having to bum a tube off someone. So I'm grateful for those. Have you ever drafted someone for 75% or more of a race and then beat them at the end? No hands up. You get class acts. Have you ever had to stay on someone's wheel to survive a ride or anything? all of you. That's awesome. Okay. All right. Let's do finish this sentence. Maybe just a couple can jump in if you feel like you've got a good answer. So the first one is, fill in the blank. I'm so glad my mom doesn't know I blank when I race.
Do 45 miles an hour down a gravel descent. This is just one word. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
No, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. Bike packing is blank.
Looks
Dumb?
like fun. Well, I don't know. I technically bike packed across Iowa myself, so I don't know.
So Claire, you said dumb.
Yeah, I see the appeal. I haven't done it. I did do a big portion of a pretty famous bike packing route in Minnesota on the North Shore this past week, but I just did about 100-ish miles of it and just banged it out in a day. And I only had to carry half as much stuff. It was great.
You're like, carry less stuff, ride faster. That's the answer.
Seems like a lot of planning.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. UCI starting a gravel series is blank.
Irrelevant.
Crappy.
Irrelevant. It's a good question. Good answer.
All right. Good. What was the Phil? Did you say something else? I heard irrelevant. And
Mine was less politically correct. Let's go with Jonathan's.
all right. And this one, everybody can jump in if you like. I wish I learned blank sooner.
That I don't have to hammer it the whole ride. That's how I started out racing. And then I realized, oh, I can work with people. So
What else you wish you learned sooner?
No
Everyone-
one?
Perfect.
How to deadlift.
How to deadlift? You wish you started deadlifting sooner?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I need to try this. I need to try this. Do more.
Be
Kari
careful.
Ann? Yeah.
I'm going to defer to Claire while I keep thinking.
Okay,
I
Claire,
think
what?
she's ready.
Yeah, for me, I would say like how to have confidence in my abilities and in my bike handling and fitness and everything.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. Well, folks, I tried really hard to keep this kind of close to an hour. You have been fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Stay on just for a moment, and we'll wrap up. But thank you. I want
Chris,
to put it.
Thanks for
Yes.
putting on the series. Thanks for putting on the series.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you,
Yes.
guys.
Thank you.
You guys are very kind. I appreciate it. I want to put a big shout out as well to our sponsors, Bike Rags. They're great. They provide our jerseys. We've got XX2I that's providing sunglasses for everybody, and our newest sponsor, End Collar. It's men's like dress wear, so we're going to have to figure out something comparable for the women's division. Make sure that everybody looks good on and off the bike, but we'll figure that out. And so with that. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic gravel time.